Okay, so welcome to the Back to Basics Training Series Health Communication Campaigns. And Paris will Paris Barnes, our health communication specialist, will be presenting. So I'm going to send it over to her.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Brooke for some updates from OPHI. Thank you. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Okay, there we go. Paris, I don't know if you said other things before you said I'm going to throw it over to Brooke, so you may want to repeat those because you were on mute before I get started.
I was on the roll. I didn't realize I was muted until about 2 seconds ago. So I just wanted to introduce myself and just say welcome to the Back to Basics training series on health communications campaigns. I'm so excited for you all to see it. I know it's going to be some really good information. And before we get started, we're going to just go ahead and have Ms. Brooke give us any updates that she has for us.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the Back to Basics training. We're excited to talk about health communications campaign. This tends to be a little bit of a, this has been, let's say, a little bit of a struggle for us. And we've tried different ways over the years to help bring us all forward to truly have health communication campaigns. So, we hope that you, of course, we want you to pay attention to every single session that we have, but I do hope that you all will take some pointers from here that will help you make your campaigns more effective. And so we're appreciative of Paris and the expertise that she brings towards this particular topic. So just a couple of announcements for everything that we do in the Office of Population Health Improvement. Oh, and I'm Brooke Holmes, Program Administrator with the Office of Population Health Improvement. But for everything that we do, we generally send our correspondence to the prevention coordinators, just so you all, as a reminder, that you are aware, it is our expectation that every grantee or every jurisdiction is represented on this call. You do not have to have all of the staff represented. That's your choice, though, if you would like that, all of your prevention staff. But generally, all of our information is going to go to the prevention coordinators, and then it is up to you to decide who from your teams you want to participate, and you're welcome to forward that information. We'll let you know if something is specific for just the prevention coordinators, or if there's a specific audience that we want, but otherwise it is your prerogative to share with whomever, just as long as your particular jurisdiction is represented. The budget modification deadline has been extended to April 29th. So that is just a reminder that if you have any budget mods that you need to submit, those will be due by April 29th. Additionally, sticking with the financial piece, quarterly financial reports are a requirement of your jurisdiction to submit. They are to go to the OPHI Prevention Finance Department. There are lots of jurisdictions that are missing that have not been submitting those. Of course, generally your fiscal officers at your respective health department or other entity are the ones who submit that information, but you should be ensuring that that information, this is directly to prevention coordinators or supervisors, you should be ensuring that that is happening on a quarterly basis, that those financial reports are being submitted. Again, they are supposed to be submitted on a quarterly basis, so please work with your fiscal officers to get that done. Health communications. Oh, one other thing, and then I'll get to the health communications, and then I'll throw it back to you, Paris. The prevention inbox. We have asked repeatedly that everyone use the prevention inbox, ophi.prevention@maryland.gov. And I will make sure to put all of this information in the chat when I am done. Please, 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 any questions, when you're submitting everything, please send it to the prevention inbox. When you send things to our personal inboxes, myself, Latiqua Holly, or Helene Hornum, sometimes it becomes that we're the only ones who have that knowledge. And then for some, we think someone else knows it, they don't. I mean, it's just a whole big old thing of just trying to make sure that everybody's in the loop. If you send it to the prevention inbox, it will ensure that all three of us or any prevention staff that we may hire will be able to see the information and be able to do whatever it is that you need them to do. Unless it's a personal matter, please, if it's related to your grants and any questions about your grants, please send it to the prevention inbox. And we will get it, and we all can do what we need to do to respond. And then lastly, health communications campaigns. We have not used the MassTap forms in a few years now. Back in 2020, I want to say was the first time that we started talking about health communication campaigns or social marketing campaigns. And we came up with a new way for you all to submit that information and to help walk you through the process. And after, this meeting will determine what new information we may need to share with you with regard to this. But back in 2020, August in particular, is when we sent correspondence out regarding health communications campaigns and the requirements. There is a OPHI Health Communication Campaign Request Form. And then there is a checklist that we send, the form that you send for approval. We even sent you information about what needs approval and what doesn't need approval, just so that you could walk through that. It also tells you the approval process, kind of what you need to do prior to submission to OPHI for approval, and then what you need to do to get the approval. So again, we'll share this information again, but MassTap forms are a thing of the past. Again, we have not used them in 3 or so years. We do have an OPHI Health Communications Campaign request form that you must use at this time until further notice. And I did see a question in the chat about the I think it was in relation to the financial forms. Yes, the financial quarterly report. Eric Gonder is the operations manager for OPHI. You can copy him, but I will again put in the chat the inbox that it is to go to. Those quarterly financial reports should go to that inbox, the prevention inbox, on a quarterly basis. Again, please work with your fiscal officers. I think that's it. I don't know if there are any other questions, comments, or concerns. Oh, no. Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Ben. Hearing and seeing none, we can go ahead and move forward.
Thank you so much. Also, before we begin, allow me to introduce you to the members of our team. For right now, we are the Fab Five, but we'll be adding an additional person really soon. So we have Dr. Fadia Shaya, Dr. Michelle Taylor, Vanessa, Nicole, and myself. I'm the newbie of the team. So thank you for allowing us to present to you and to work with you. The purpose of this webinar is not to analyze whether your jurisdiction is doing certain methods for dissemination, but rather to give you a little bit more insight and some context to consider when implementing your campaigns in the future. And I think we all understand that marketing is very subjective. So what we want to do is just give you some ideas to kind of give you more knowledge, spark your creativity, and kind of just garner in what you're already doing, but kind of improve it. So the learning objectives will be to define health communications. We're going to discuss the differences between campaigns and promotions, and we'll spend quite a bit of time on that portion. We're also going to discuss components of health communications campaigns. We're going to work to understand evaluation metrics for campaigns and promotions. And we're going to view quite a few examples of effective and ineffective campaigns. So this is going to be interactive. You guys aren't going to sit and listen to me talk the whole time. We're going to go through and have some fun together. So you can't do a training without an icebreaker. So in the chat box, you're going to open the chat, and I want you all to think about some health communications campaigns that your jurisdictions have done. And then think about why your jurisdiction chose to do that specific campaign. And you're also going to think about why they chose to use that specific type of media for the campaign. So if you can, go ahead and type that in the chat, and Nicole is going to monitor the chat and kind of read off some of those examples for us.
So Mimi Dean said that they've used the SAMHSA Talk They Hear You. Mary Ellen said they've implemented campaigns based on data and feedback from surveys.
Awesome. Those are great examples. You should always base any type of campaign off of data. So that's wonderful. Anything else?
Lynn from Worcester shared that they use social media platforms based on their focus group data. Ben shared that they've used community focus groups on message creation.
Awesome. Thank you so much all for sharing. And all of those examples are wonderful reasons and ways that you could have implemented your campaigns. So thank you for sharing. So let's define what health communications means. Health communications involves a strategy to influence and empower individuals, populations, and communities to make healthier choices. So the overarching goal of a health communication is to promote positive change in attitudes and behavior. So the key thing we want to think about here is positive change in attitudes and behaviors. So we don't want to think about making a quick change, but we want to think about making positive changes for the future. Effective health communication and marketing campaigns must have research. So you have to use research-based strategies to shape your materials, products, communication channels, and anything else that you decide to distribute. So for example, if you're going to use social media or newsletters, print, television, transit, you have to research your area before you decide to do that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to use a transit ad for an area that doesn't even have public transportation. So these are all things that you would do in the research process. It's also extremely important to have a deep understanding and knowledge of cultural concepts, languages, and priorities for different cultures and settings. We must have a consideration of health literacy and social determinants of health. So things such as access to internet, media availability, and views of the media are big things that play into campaigns that we do. You also want to think about a consumer's access to care. So when you think about access to care, we're thinking about those social determinants of health. These are things that we have to think about when implementing health communications campaigns. And then once we're developing our campaign, we have to think about metrics that we're going to use to evaluate these things. So in the few slides, we're going to talk about very specific elements of each of these moments in creating your health communications campaigns. Theories and models are used in program planning to understand and explain health behavior and to guide identification, development, and implementation of interventions. So these models are typically used to create campaigns, and these are models that we've all seen once, twice, or even a few times when creating campaigns. So I'm going to go over each of these models, and then while I'm going through them, start to think about how you've seen these implemented, or maybe how your jurisdictions have implemented each of these. So the ecological model refers to influence behavior in regards to knowledge, beliefs, rules, policies, culture, and regulations. The most commonly used model in health is the health belief model is, the most commonly used model is health belief model. So this model focuses on explaining and predicting possible changes in health behaviors. The only downfall to this method is it does not take into effect someone's attitudes, beliefs, habits, or social determinants. In some cases, this model is even viewed as being tone deaf, depending on the audience. The theoretical model uses the audience's readiness to change and to drive success. This model best works when used when you can confirm someone is ready to change. So for example, if you're creating a campaign that will be seen in a rehab or a treatment facility, that model works best for them because you can already confirm that this person has decided to make a change. Social cognitive theory relies on environmental factors for change through self-efficacy and support. So this is like through team building or exercises. In this method, people rely on people to make the change. And then the theory of planned behavior hopes that audiences has a will to engage in a new behavior. And this method works best in intimate settings. So this isn't a method that you may use for a large scale campaign, but if you were doing like a small focus group or a little seminar, this method works best for that group. So now that we have a brief understanding of some of the common theories used to create health communications, we're going to discuss the differences between a campaign and a promotion. So first, for health communication campaigns, we have to plan. An effective campaign takes careful thought and knowledge of a problem to be addressed. So we all work in prevention, so we have to take careful knowledge of what we're going to decide, what method or what mode of prevention we're going to address. So when we're creating these, we can't just say we're gonna promote prevention as a whole. We really want to think about what feature of prevention or what thing we're going to try to prevent. So we really want to hone in and try to choose something very specific. And in our planning portion, market research to define market strategy often occurs before the campaign is even launched. So during this time, this is when we're looking at our demographic, our target market, our audience, all of those things that go into actually creating a campaign, and all of those things that actually go into showing someone the campaign is what we're thinking about in this process. Now, once we've done that and we've done all the research we can, it's time to launch that ad. So after we launch the ad, we want to make sure that we are continuously tracking the ad. And what we mean by that is we want to keep on looking at this method of a campaign to make sure that it's reaching where it's supposed to go. And then if it's not, we're going to go ahead and shift and make some changes. And just as a brief reminder, campaigns usually only run for maybe a maximum of about 120 days due to a strict time frame for a call to action. So it's not a continuous thing. It's not that we're going to keep on posting on social media to raise awareness. A campaign is a very specific cause with a very specific call to action. And during that time of your campaign, you're able to measure that specific call to action. Now, after you've launched your campaign and you've ran it for your 120 days or less, it's time to evaluate. And to evaluate, we have to have some specific metrics to evaluate our success. So this could be our click-through rate, our impressions, our viewer completion rate. This can be quite a few different things. And then we also have to have other mechanisms to understand lessons learned and what we can do differently. And to do this, the best method is to gather baseline data to evaluate the impact of your campaign. So to go just a little bit further, baseline data means what did it look like before my campaign ran? So how many people were using this specific substance, or how many people were not using this specific substance? You want to look at your baseline data first. And then during and after your campaign, that's when you're going to evaluate if your campaign made any changes to behavior based on your call to action. Now, on the other hand, we have health communications promotions, which is something that we all do and should be doing regularly. So using promotions is a great way to raise awareness. However, it should not be used as a standalone strategy. This is something we all should be doing on the regular. We post on our Facebook pages, we share the good news about our jurisdictions, we share our initiatives. That's something we should be doing on a continuous basis because we want to continue to raise awareness and be important. Promotions should always be done frequently, and they should be used as a means to educate the population, but it should not be used as a standalone strategy because it doesn't really hone in on a specific audience. So while you're planning your health communication promotions, promotions often include verbal, written, or digital strategies that influence, empower, or inform a viewer of your initiative. So this could be social media posts. You could be resharing something that you posted in the past. This could be recreating media that you've already used and just resurfacing it. During your launching process, the promotions are very broad in reach. So there isn't very much market segmentation or determining what audience needs to see it. Promotions often don't have a specific timeline because the message is usually continuous. And then during your evaluation process, it can be completed to kind of look at overall views and shares. But just understand that during the evaluation process of a health promotion, it typically depends on how many followers you have to begin with. So you may not really truly see true data for who is seeing your information because it's already determined by your organization's reach. So this is a super easy way to kind of think about the difference between the two. So when you're in the process of creating your upcoming campaigns, you should pull this little nifty pager out and think about, what am I creating? Am I creating a promotion or am I creating a campaign? And again, both of them are used interchangeably, but they shouldn't be. We should be thinking about them much differently because campaigns are extremely honed in and extremely focused. So when you have a campaign, you're aimed at very specific exposure. And then with the promotion, it's simply aimed at awareness. So we're just aiming it at teaching our population about what we do and what the importance of certain things are. When you're doing a campaign, you have a very defined target audience, and we're going to go over that in a few slides, exactly what that means. And then with promotions, it's more general. It's just based on your audience's reach and how many followers that you may have at the moment, or maybe even how many people are attending an event at that moment. Campaigns always involve a direct call to action. There has to be something that you're trying to get someone to do from a campaign. So I want you to think about McDonald's when they have a very specific campaign for a very specific Happy Meal toy. The call to action is, take my kid to McDonald's to get my Happy Meal toy because now this new Disney movie is coming out and my baby wants this toy. Whereas a promotion in general would be, get the Happy Meal because it's $6.99. So that's how you want to think about the difference. Campaigns have extremely specific goals, whereas promotional goals are broad, usually just who views it, how many views are there. Campaigns last over a dedicated period of time, and promotions are going to be something you're always going to do to raise awareness, and you should be continuously doing that. For campaigns, very extensive research is done before implementation. And then for promotions, it may be minimal to none, maybe. Sometimes we're just resharing a picture. So just minimal. And then with campaigns, there are very fixed metrics that you're going to use to evaluate your success. And then with promotions, it's very broad. Again, both of them can be used together, but promotions shouldn't be just your standalone strategy. You should be using them together. So let's dive in a little bit deeper about audience. So the audience is one of the most important elements of any communication campaign. So creating a campaign is nothing if you're not making it to the intended viewer. So here are some major differences that should help you tackle audiences in your future campaigns. So for campaigns, the audience must be very specific. And as you can see from the little clip art there, there's a whole group of people, but there's that one person with the target sign and that's red. That means that one person or that one piece of that pie is who we're supposed to be looking to. So you want to think about segmentation in terms of social groups, maybe level of use, values, race, gender, specific ages, and that's a big one. Using a specific age is usually a go-to for just about any audience segmentation. And then you always want to think about the speaking languages in the campaign area. It is very important to make sure that when you're running a campaign, you truly take into consideration what languages are spoken in the area that you are running a campaign. And then when you're thinking about promotions, it's very broad and it's usually based on the organization's reach. So if my Twitter has 500 followers, I could only expect maybe half of those followers to even see my message because of the nature of Twitter, because it's a timeline type product. So think of reach in terms of maybe the number of followers or the number of people who attended your event or seminar. Some people like to look at the amount of likes and shares to gauge how successful of an audience viewed it. Email open rates are really good too. If you're sending a newsletter, you're going to use that to figure out how many people open the email. But the thing about that is you don't know how many people actually read it. So that's another thing to consider. And then you're also going to think about the number of community connections. So how many people have you shared this campaign or promotion with in your community? If your community is kind of rural, that might be a very small number of people who have seen the promotion. So here's another clip art image. Think about yourself as the person in the red, and then all these little blue people in the back. These are all the people that you're trying to give information to in your promotion. So as you can see, it's not very targeted, but the information is still relevant. It's just making it to a whole lot more people within a target market. All right, so I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into audience segmentation, because now that we understand exactly what an audience is, I think it's important to dive a bit deeper down into figuring out exactly what segmentation is for these audiences. So here are some examples of segmentations that you might want to consider when creating your next campaign. So you always want to think about age, gender or sex, education, income, marital status, family size, ethnicity, and religion. These are extremely important because what one person values may not be what another person values. So think about your jurisdictions, think about the genetic makeup of your jurisdictions, think about who should be seeing the message that you're creating, and then use all of those things to determine what audience you want to show that information to. Geographic location is also extremely important. Urban areas see things a little bit differently than areas that are a little bit more rural. So think about when you're doing your audience segmentation, who needs to see the message the most? So if you're in an urban city area and that area has a high number of use, then you want to make sure that you hone in and decide that I'm going to show my ads in urban areas as opposed to rural areas because I get a bit more exposure. It's also really important to think about one's beliefs or values or interests or attitudes about a specific thing. And prevention can be a super touchy subject depending on what you're talking about. Some people don't view the use of certain things as a problem. So it's very important to kind of think about the values of the people that you're presenting the information to determine if that's a good audience for me to show the information to in the first place. And the last is think about the behavior of the client that you're showing the information to. You want to think about maybe how long the person has been using, or the stages of use, or even if they're ready to make a change in the first place. So think about if that audience is someone that you want to utilize to use your campaign for. Research. So this is the biggest part of most of the work that we all do. So research is the process of determining the viability of a new product, service, view, or message through research directly conducted with potential consumers or your audience. So market research pretty much allows you to discover directly from the audience what they're thinking, their opinions, their feedback, or just any ideas that they may have. Typically, research can be conducted in-house by your jurisdiction or by a third-party company that specializes in market research. And typically market research is done through surveys, maybe product testing, and focus groups. And I think we all know that nobody wants to do a survey unless there's going to be something that they're going to get in the end. We all get that receipt that tells us to do the survey, but unless we're getting a coupon at the end of it, we're not doing that survey. So you want to think about in your research process for gathering your audience, what you can do to give them as compensation for their time and efforts and giving you information that you need. So some people do coupons, stipends, free products, gift cards, money. You can be as creative as your organization allows you to be with that. So once the research has been completed, it's time to start developing our campaign. Campaign development is the process of maintaining consistent, let's say that again, consistent messaging across numerous marketing channels. This includes traditional and digital media. So we want to think about this. We don't want to oversaturate, but we definitely want to saturate, because we want to make sure that whatever method of media we decide to use, that the message is consistent and it matches what we're trying to show. So we always want to make sure that we're utilizing different promotional methods to advertise the same core content and the same core message. As long as we can grasp the concept of doing this, then we'll make sure that we have a lasting impression for our audience. While a campaign is being developed, we really want to take the time to understand the steps an audience takes from the beginning to end. So we want to put ourselves in the mind of the person that is actually looking at the campaign. So the first step is the client or the audience has to be able to have knowledge of the problem. So they have to understand that I have a problem, or a problem exists, or even be aware that the problem exists before they're willing to even consider changing the behavior. So we don't want you to think of your campaigns as something that's going to immediately change someone's behavior, because it might not. Because maybe a consumer is not on that level yet on the six steps. Maybe they're not there yet. So every ad or every campaign won't reach everyone, but we want to make sure that we attempt to understand the steps a client takes before they understand what's going on. The next step is they have to have a belief in the problem's importance. So in order for any type of campaign to be important, the person has to believe it's important to them. So if it's not important to the client, then it's not important to the ad does nothing for them. So it has to be important to them before they begin to even absorb the information that you present in your campaign. Then the person has to have a desire to change. So campaigns are only effective if a person decides I'm ready to change. And I think we all know this working in prevention. No one's going to change until they're ready to change. So I think we have to step back and think about it in the terms of the client can't change until they're ready to. So while I'm creating these promotions and campaigns, I need to understand that I need to really hone in on maybe the people who are ready to change. Next step is having a belief in the ability to change. One has to believe that they can change before they make an effort to do so. So this is why maybe some of the ads in the past didn't really work as much, because ads in the past typically focused on scare tactics and making people think that if something happened, then this would happen. And in doing that, you kind of took away the person's belief that they could change, because they made the consequences so severe. The next one is action. At this stage, the individual has determined that I'm going to make an effective change and that they're willing to do something. So these are the people that your campaign most actively reflects. When you get your evaluations from your campaign, the people in the action step are the people who you can truly believe actually viewed or even did the call of action for your campaign. And the last step is the ability to maintain change. So we all know that in the prevention field, the goal is for people to maintain the changes that they've decided to make in their lives. So once the changes occurred, it's our job during health promotions, not campaigns, but promotions and information sharing, to make sure that we help them maintain the change that they've decided to make. So I know that seems like a lot, but when you really think about it in terms of a consumer, this all makes sense. And we all do this every day in anything we buy at the store. We decide we need a new outfit, cool, because I can't fit my old one. So now I believe if I buy a new size, I'm going to get it. But then maybe I don't believe that. So I'm going to not buy it and decide to lose weight instead. So just think about it in terms of how you think about things that you decide to purchase or items that you look at. So here are some common implementation methods that jurisdictions have used. So the first one is going to be social media, but free. So free social media is simply sharing a post, creating an image, putting it on your social media, and that's that. The next one is social media, but paid. So have you ever felt like you talked about something to your friend and then all of a sudden you saw that ad on the side of social media that shows exactly what you just talked about because Big Brother is always listening? That's exactly what it's like. So that paid social media ad that rotates on the side of your screen, that's something that someone has pretty much geo-targeted to you to see because they have determined that you are the proper audience to see that. So those are what paid social media ads kind of look like. Traditional print could be your magazines, newsletters, flyers, postcards, pamphlets, any handheld collateral that you can give to someone would be under traditional print. Transit media could be billboards, bus wraps, subway posters, or those transit videos that kind of show while you're waiting in queue to get on your bus or transit. Transit media truly only honestly works best if your area even has transit to begin with. So you have to be able to have a successful bus line or a successful transit, or even a high traffic area where they're going to see that billboard. And then digital media is honestly the most common, especially in these days, where you're going to have your TV commercials, your radio, your connected TV ads. And what those are ads that are embedded into digital services such as Spotify or YouTube, where you see that ad first before you see the video you actually want to see. And then we have embedded paid advertising. And again, those are the things that are kind of stuck before those videos that you can't skip, but you want to skip them, but you can't. Those are embedded media. Or when you first turn on TikTok, no matter what you do, as soon as you turn on TikTok, there's going to be an ad that plays, and it's designed to be that way. All right, so enough of me talking. In this portion, Nicole is going to go ahead and launch a whiteboard for us. And in that whiteboard, I want you to type in some of the campaign metrics that you have used before in your jurisdictions. So what have you used to measure your campaigns? Was it click-through rate? Was it viewers, impressions? Anything that you've used, go ahead and type that in there.
Just let everyone know if you hit the text, that might be the easiest, because then you can just it's a text box instead of you trying to write it with a marker.
Now, if you've got good skills and you want to write it with the marker, I'd be here to see it.
And you can change your color if you'd like under format.
If for some reason you're having difficulty using the whiteboard, you can certainly insert the information in the chat. Okay, so I see impressions, click-through rate, impressions, and website. Yep, click-through rates is normal. Great.
No one able to use the whiteboard.
Surveys. Okay. Viewership. No worries, the chat works just as fine. Likes, comments, shares, very good.
Oh, you have to hit annotate. That's for you to write on the whiteboard.
There we go. Hey, Holly, go ahead and write with that marker. Individuals reached, okay. Focus groups and surveys. Oh, Holly, that's perfect. Perfect. Thank you all so much for your input. This is awesome. It's good to know that you all have a great idea of exactly what you should be tracking.
Nice work with the marker. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and send it back.
All right. Great. So most of you said just about all of these with the exception of a few. So viewer completion rate is the number of people who watched your entire ad. And just to give you a little bit of understanding of VCR, VCR is typically really low because the attention span of people is ridiculously low. So if you have a video and the viewer completion rate is about 3 to 5%, you've done a good job. So I don't want you to think when you look at these things that the numbers are low because no one looked at it. Viewer completion simply means how many people looked at my ad from start to finish. It doesn't mean they didn't get your information because they looked at 6 seconds of it instead of 10. It just means how many people completed it. Your click-through rates usually are the click to ad, that's the number of times someone clicked an ad or the amount of times your ad was showed and someone actually clicked it. Your click-through rate is good because this actually shows you how many people maybe went to your landing page or maybe are going to respond to your call of action. So click-through rate's amazing. This is what any search engine uses to determine how many people have looked up a certain thing. So this is amazing. That's always a good metric. Cost per click is something that we would see more so in the back end. Cost per click is the amount of money each advertisement or click costs. So depending on how often you want to run your ad and how many times you want your ad seen, you may be paying for the amount of people that click your advertisement. And that's not a bad thing, especially if you are in a business where you are generating revenue, or if you're in a business where you have to be able to show that someone clicked it in order for you to receive revenue. So cost per click is certainly an investment, and it's a great metric to use when determining if someone has seen anything. Your open rate is the percentage of people who opened or viewed your publication. So only downfall is you don't know how many people actually read it, but you can tell how many people opened it. Conversions is how many people perform the desired action. So anytime you do an ad, you want to think about, what do I want the client to do for my ad? Do I want them to watch it? Do I want them to click my ad and say, I did this? Do you want them to complete a survey? Do you want them to do a focus group? Conversions is pretty much how many people did what you wanted them to do. And this all goes into with your call of action. Your call of action is pretty much, what did I want the client to do? Did they click that button? Did the audience decide to call the hotline to get help? Did they fill out a survey? Did they share my hashtag? So the call to action can be measured by how many people did exactly what you wanted them to do. And then when you're evaluating, you can also evaluate the changes in behavior or the changes in skill or attitude. This is typically done with the use of an assessment at the end of a campaign, and that's how you would measure if someone's attitude changed. You would also look at the data. Maybe the use in your area has decreased because of your campaign. So that can be used just simply through looking at data and kind of understanding what exactly happened. Okay. Right. So I know we went over it a lot, but now we're going to have a 10-minute break. So I'm going to have you all come back at 10:45. We're going to come back at 10:55, and we're going to continue. The next portion is going to be a lot more interactive. So just get ready to listen and learn. All right, welcome back, everyone. We wanted to go back a few slides just to kind of talk a little bit more about the social marketing campaign 6-stage model. So I'm going to have Nicole kind of briefly reiterate just a few more facts about this model.
Sure, thanks, Paris. So I just thought that this slide really highlighted why campaigns are really changing individual behavior. And so it's not an environmental strategy, but it really is the change at the individual level. And so because you're really need the, just like you would have a one-on-one education, you need that same level of readiness and to measure the impact on the individual. So just highlighting that, and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so here are some proven tactics for prevention campaigns, and we're going to talk about some do's and don'ts. So while you begin to think about your campaigns for the future, here are some things that you should consider, and here are some things that you should not. So for do's, we want to do some messages aimed at reduction as opposed to simply quitting. I think we all know that that just say no mentality does not work, and it kind of never has. So we want to aim at reduction as opposed to simply quitting. We want to think about skill building and providing the skills to decline or reduce substance use. So this means we want to give our audience the tools it takes to be able to reduce what they're already doing. We want to cite immediate consequences. So nothing long-term, but rather what happens now if I do this action? Long-term consequences don't typically work because the way the common mind thinks, if it's not going to bother me now, I'm not concerned with it. So when you're creating your campaigns, think about what happens to the person now and cite some immediate consequences. We also want to make sure that we communicate healthy alternatives. And then normative education with true rates. We shouldn't be exaggerating the facts about anything because at the end of the day, everybody is going to go and Google that fact and tell you you're wrong. So it's always best to make sure that we give true rates and true facts about exactly what's going on. Ooh, and then here are some don'ts. So fear tactics or scare tactics, they don't work. They often come off as being kind of hilarious and cheesy, and then they miss the message of exactly what you try to do. The just say no gives no alternatives, and it's kind of using the cold turkey approach, again, which we all know doesn't really work. We want to make sure that we're not creating ads that are not culturally sensitive. So we know that areas that we're going to be showing our campaigns to, but make sure that we're not doing things that aren't culturally sensitive to the viewers that need to see it. So make sure that we're not having underlying stigmas attached to whatever we're producing. It's not good to do one-time events. So if we're going to do a one-time thing that we never do again, it doesn't really do anything because it doesn't produce change, right? So it's only important for that very moment that we've done the campaign, but it doesn't really produce any change. So think about if the Be More Healthy Expo only did it one time, then we would never talk about it again. We'd never hear about it again. And then that would be the end of exactly what happened at that time. So continuously doing it is exactly what makes it relevant. Personal testimonies, they don't really work because it can backfire. So what people always think with personal testimonies is, cool, if they quit, I can too, but when I'm ready. So sometimes personal testimonies backfire because there's going to be that person that believes that they're invincible and that just because they quit, that's great, and then I can do it when I'm ready. Demonstrations of fake images and substance use, it can be traumatic, for someone who is recovering or someone who is still actively using a demonstration and an advertisement of someone using said substance can be extremely traumatic, and it oftentimes gives negative or adverse effects. Fact sheets for younger audiences specifically, they usually spark curiosity rather than consequences. So if you've had a younger population, some younger kids, maybe middle school or elementary school before they even begin being introduced to use, fact sheets sometimes typically spark curiosity about what it is or what it can do for them, as opposed to veering them off to not doing it at all. Oh, and then role playing. Role playing is not a great idea to have people act out scenarios when you're trying to change a behavior. So why are we putting the behavior on display when we want them to change the behavior? And then they often become kind of funny and comical. And then again, you kind of lose the intention of what you wanted to do to begin with. So role playing is not usually a really good thing for prevention. It's good for other things, but maybe not prevention. So in the next few slides, we're going to go over some examples of some successful campaigns, and then we're going to show you some not so successful campaigns. This is one that I would view as being successful, and the next slide's kind of going to explain to you the methodology that they used and why we believe it was a successful campaign. So this is the Oregon Youth Cannabis Prevention Campaign. As you can see from the pictures, because it was targeted at youth, all the images are going to show people who are youth doing things that youth do. So computers, skateboarding, hanging out with their friends. Maybe they're that 16-year-old that just got their first job. So you'll see here that the images truly reflect that. The font is something that's fun that someone younger would be able to understand and view. And the colors aren't too serious. And that's pretty important when you're doing an ad. The colors here aren't really serious. So you know that someone younger may actually stop and view this for a second or two. So this campaign was short, simple, and sweet with 5 simple steps for goals that they wanted to accomplish during that campaign. So understanding and minimizing, education, protect, prevent, and monitor. So all in all, they wanted to educate their population about the uses related to cannabis use. They wanted to protect children and vulnerable populations from exposure in the first place. They wanted to prevent cannabis use for youth, and then they wanted to monitor the use, attitude, and health behaviors in Oregon if someone decided to use. They decided that their audience segmentation would be young adults between the ages of 12 and 20, and then their parents would be the secondary audience. Now, the reason their parents for this are the secondary audience, because in our perfect world, we believe that individuals who are 12 years age up until 18 are monitored, and their television intake or media intake is monitored by their parents. So the secondary audience was the parents, because we wanted to make sure that in the fact that someone saw this communication, that the parents were aware of what was being seen. Oregon determined that it was best to use digital, television, radio, social media, and a small amount of print to be able to get their message out to their community. And the way they thought about their campaign, they had a very simple campaign philosophy, and I thought it was extremely amazing. The campaign is primarily expected to influence attitudes toward and perceptions of the risk of youth marijuana use. So mind you, their philosophy was never to ask the youth to quit. It was never to ask the youth to not do it. It was never to tell the youth exactly what it is they're doing and how it can make them feel. It was just to influence the attitudes toward it and the perception of it. So they were just working to change the attitude about what it is, as opposed to making someone change the behavior. So the model below shows that they're thinking about maybe their attitudes and their perception of risks. And then the end game is to maybe change the behavior, but that wasn't their goal to begin with. They never said we want to change the behavior. They said we really want to change the attitude, but in the end, if the behavior changes, we're cool with that too. All right, and then here's another example from the Vermont Department of Health, reducing recreational and misuse of opioids. So they created some advertisement that was circled around reduction and reducing the idea of recreational use. So you're thinking about that college age group of kids, maybe between the ages of 18 and 25, and that's exactly who they decided to market this product to, and their perceived use of opioids recreationally. And they found out through research that their perception was that it carried little to no risk for occasional use. So this is your person that's not always a user. They're using it at a party, or they're using it to focus for a test. They're taking that Adderall maybe to focus for a test. So this is a completely different group of people that they're deciding to show prevention to. This isn't your typical person that's been using. This is your person that only wants to use sometimes. So they came up and they have an understanding of a decision block framework. So that's this colorful image that you see there. So they've determined that in order for them to be able to assess their campaign goals, they have to understand the urgency, the perceived relevance, the understanding of risk, and the fundamental knowledge of the opioid itself. They determined that for this market group, that they were only going to use lots of organic social media. So what that means is some posts that they sporadically post. This would be like free social media, paid digital media content, and other online digital experiences. So that could be anything through Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, all those fun things that we use for digital media. And they determined that this was the place that most people between that age group would be able to view their information. So that's where they decided to place it. Okay, so this is probably my favorite part of the presentation. So we're going to break out into some groups. Nicole's going to break us out into groups in just a moment. And we're going to each look at one video that shows some examples of prevention campaigns that have run in the past. And while you're looking at these videos, I want you to really think about some of the pros, some of the cons, maybe the theories that you see on display, and then your overall thoughts of the campaign in general. You know, we all work in prevention, and I think it's always important to be able to critique other people's prevention work and other campaigns to decide what we're going to do in the future. So we're going to break up into the groups for 5 minutes. We're going to look at our videos, and then we're going to come back and we're going to hear from each or a spokesperson from that group about maybe what they thought about it. And we'll each have an opportunity to see the other group's videos that we saw, and we'll all discuss those as well. So Nicole's going to split us up, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look at these videos, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, we're back. Hopefully you all had a chance to view all those amazing videos. And we're going to go ahead and show you each video individually, and the groups that had those are going to have a moment to kind of talk about how they felt about it, any pros, cons, and any other additional information. So here's the first one. And I believe this might have been maybe Nicole's group, but here's the first one.
I knew it hurt her. My heart broke in half, and I felt like I was about as close to losing her as I was going to get. And active addiction, you don't know what's going on. What I thought about was the little girl with the pageant dress on. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be doing these things. There is hope. She found inside herself that she's way better than that, and she rose from it.
Okay. All right, so this group, just go ahead and you can unmute yourself and just let us know kind of how you felt about the ad, the pros, the cons, what did you see?
So I have to unmute people. I guess I can change it, but I'll unmute Sandy first because she spoke.
Okay.
There you go.
Put me on the spot, why don't you, Nicole? We kind of looked at it. The one thing was the fact that it made it look kind of easy. So the term I used was, it was sort of a rosies and posies type of campaign, which made everything look simple and, you know, how great it is, which it can be, but it's also hard. But it also made the realization also that, you know, she was better than this by saying, you know, that she remembered the little girl in the pageant dress. And so therefore it shows that, you know, she had a life, she had a way, and she ended up that way. And then she realized within herself that she was better than this. And so she did get the self-help, or she had the wherewithal to get help. Not always is everybody able to do that. Sometimes they need that, but also showing the mom and the family support, which is needed in order for recovery itself and for resiliency.
Excellent. I think that's a great point that you bring up about the family support. That's actually like a part of the ecological theory, that because her mom is her support in this ad, that's how she was able to kind of make it through. So I'm glad that you picked up on that. And that was certainly the intention of the person that created this campaign. Does anybody else have anything to chime in about this one? Even if you are just saying this for the first time, you can feel free to chime in on how you felt about it.
I'll go ahead, right? And I just let everyone can unmute themselves if they want. I have it open now to do that.
In that case, I'll say something.
Yeah, please.
I thought that it was, although it was, you know, nice music and the people are talking kind of quietly, the subject matter was really attention grabbing. And I think the background made it attention grabbing too. So you wanted to stop and listen to what they had to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we also see here in that specific campaign that the health belief model is used. So in a sense that if I don't stop, it'll get worse. So that right there is kind of trying to cite like an immediate consequence for her specifically. One of the cons that I picked up on for the ad is that the music itself can be a little bit drab or triggering. So some people might think that's like creepy music. So that may not work. And then this also may not appeal to other cultures because it didn't show any other cultures. It showed one person. So we would have to make sure that if we use something like this for a campaign, that it was only for an area that geographically and culturally looked like this for it to work the best. All right. Awesome. Thank you all. We're going to go to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. Did anyone else have any additional?
This is Sandy Miller. I just wanted to add one thing. I like that they use the ecological model and also the health belief model. Although at the end, when her mother said she's way better than them, she rose above it. I like that she rose above it. But I think that someone watching this that heard she's way better than them, it might not come across very good for people that's still struggling and fighting the addiction.
Agreed.
Just wanted to add that.
No, that's a great point. You're absolutely correct. Maybe it doesn't evoke with the person that's still struggling, and that she's better. Just the line better can be a bit triggering for someone because it's like, what makes us any different? We both did the same thing. So I think that's a great point that you brought up. Thank you.
I just want to make a quick comment about that one in the messages about the banner. That banner is a YouTube thing and not related to the campaign itself. So obviously that banner was targeted about a rehab facility because of the ad. So that's not connected to their campaign.
That's actually a good example of paid media. So that is something that somebody paid to embed on the ad so that you saw it on top of that campaign. And that is 100% allowed. And most times it's definitely ethical as long as the subject matters are similar. So that's a good example of someone had embedded some paid media into that.
I just want to add one thing. I appreciate what you said about it being a specific audience because I didn't know if little girl in a pageant dress was positive or negative.
Yeah, because for me that doesn't mean much of anything because you don't really see too many chocolate people really in pageant dresses. So it doesn't really resonate with my culture or my understanding or values. So yeah.
Right. And if a trans person saw that, they would be like, no, that's a horrible image.
Okay, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? So you're absolutely correct. It doesn't really resonate with too many people at all. It's very, very specific to whomever just saw that. Excellent. Thank you all for your feedback. I think that's amazing. All right, here is the next one. I'm going to play it for you. And again, just think about some pros, cons, and then I'll have that group kind of talk about what's going on here.
A hit in the morning, another between class, after school, and more before bed. Vaping sucks you in quick. Not to mention all the chemicals and health problems everyone's talking about. That's why thousands of teens are ready to take back their life their own way with My Life, My Quit. When you sign up with us, you'll get a free and simple quit plan that makes it easier to stop vaping. Visit mylifemyquit.com or text Start My Quit to 36072.
All right, I'll have that group go ahead and start the convo first.
Okay. That was our group, but we had some technical difficulty, so we really didn't get to really discuss it. So I think we should just do it as a if the ones that was in our group, just in Vanessa's group, we just go ahead and just kind of chime in. And one of the things that we did capture was we liked that it was a colorful. I mean, because we're appealing to the teens, so it was colorful on that. That's one of the pros that we said. And if anybody else from our group want to chime in, that's fine.
I think you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it sounded empowering, and it gave you an actionable item at the end. So instead of just leaving you kind of high and dry, it gave you something to actually, you know, it pointed you in a direction to go to kind of get, the assistance you needed. So I thought that was good.
My man, Ben. So you had picked up exactly one of the points that we wanted to convey in this video, which was it had a clear call to action at the end. The call to action was go to this app, call this number, click this for a clear step guide on how to change. That's why this ad could be something that could be measured. That's something that we could definitely look at and compare metrics to see if it worked. And I'm so glad you picked up on that because that's very important for any campaign to have something you can measure. That call to action can be measured for that time that campaign ran, for how many people actually clicked through and downloaded that guide. So thank you for noticing that.
I'll say that Anne put the same thing in the chat, that it had the direct call and we were able to see if it was effective with seeing if calls increased from it.
I wasn't in their group, but I think I like this type of ad because you can reach to diverse audiences. You don't have anybody from a specific race. You just have the voice and the pictures.
Yep, I agree with that.
And also it's good for people that they don't want to be identified. It's something they could do personally on their own, like I said, on their terms, on their steps when they're ready. So that's another thing.
Yeah, 100%. And this ad really focuses on just the health belief model and just straight up self-efficacy. Because the title of it is My Life, My Quit. So it is saying that I want to make a change in my life and I will quit when I want to. So this puts the ball directly back into the audience's court to do whatever they choose to do with it. And it's not like the person that created this is telling them to do it. It's saying, when you're ready, then go ahead and make that change. So I think that's an amazing feature of this ad.
I just have two comments and then we can move on from the chat. The first being that the target audience is very clear from this campaign. And then in terms of like some of the, the warnings that you had shared, someone wrote that it could be triggering for some that maybe are trying to quit when they see the vape pen and might, trigger them to maybe reach for their vape pen if they're not at that point to change.
Yeah, the vape pen with the skull. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, awesome. We'll move on to the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Listen, All it took was someone who would insist that I just try.
Suddenly, everything was turned around because they judge you.
You tell them, I don't need this.
No one is going to understand.
Unless they've been through it, how can they?
Then one day you realize,
You feel so hopeless.
I need help. I need help.
You feel so hopeless.
Then one day you realize,
Unless they've been through it, how can they understand?
I don't need this.
No one's going to judge you.
suddenly everything was turned around because they insist that I just try.
All it took was someone who would just
Listen.
All right. So it was a lot in that ad. So I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Taylor's group go first, because that ad kind of gave us a whole lot to look at and think about, right? All right.
So we had some technical difficulties also.
Oh, okay.
We didn't have a whole lot of time to discuss, but I had put in a note if just a couple people from the group could just speak up to what their perspective was just on the first video.
So my perspective, I like the message in the first video. However, it did show, depending on the audience that it was shown to, it did show like the use of drugs and maybe how to do it, which wouldn't be so good to show to youth or to market towards youth or something, or like maybe to a group that is in recovery. It might be triggering to those individuals. But the message was good. So like if we could have maybe not had shown the drug use and how to do it, maybe that would have been better. But that's what kind of spoke to me in that, but it could have been triggering for those in recovery or if that was their drug of choice. And there wasn't a lot of diversity of individuals in the video.
You were right on point, Holly. So as someone who's worked for large scale marketing firms that has put on ads like this is a big no-no. This is something that we would have never put on television at all, just because it shows the use. And honestly, people are extremely impressionable. And maybe someone was just on the edge of thinking about using, and then now they're like, oh, this is how you do it, let's. So this is something that we would have never, ever, ever placed on television. This is something that would have been a very specific thing that maybe would have showed in a facility or somewhere very targeted. So I'm glad that you mentioned that it's triggering, because that is probably one of the first things that I picked up on, that I thought that this was extremely triggering, and the showing of use was a bit rough. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
So one positive about this ad is I like how they showed the complete patient journey, because you can sort of benchmark where you are along it and get the perspective that you're not going to be there forever. But on the second watching, it was very white.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that though. It did. It kind of gave you like the full circle of what someone might go through that process. So that's a great perspective. I didn't even think about that. Thanks.
I have a little bit of a problem with this ad, just because it kind of leaves me hanging. It feels like the whole message is listen, just listen. That's a whole minute of this really intense stuff to just tell me to listen. I don't really know what to do with that.
Yeah, like what do I do after? I've listened. Now, how do I help you?
Yeah. Or listen to what? Listen to who do I turn around to, and who am I supposed to be listening to? What it doesn't make sense to me.
All right, great perspective, and thank you for sharing. Okay. All right, and then one of the pros I'll say is that the ad was simple and right to the point. It does show the whole perspective of prevention, so I will show that. So that's definitely something that's a positive. And then one of the downsides of it is exactly what someone else says. It's not very diverse, and some cultures are not going to be able to relate to this ad. They had someone laying in a greenhouse, someone, who was struggling. If you are in an urban area, you don't have a greenhouse to lay in. So I think that the ad could have been a little bit more diverse, and it did kind of lack some elements of understanding everyone who is, using or having issues with substance use. All right, let's go to the next one.
And just for reference, Paris, sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
That one, just for everybody's knowledge, was an ecological and a social cognitive theory ads. That's the theories they were connected to.
Oh, no, I was going to say on the note of it was triggering, but also when it said they come to youth, knowing how to use, I said because of the web and social media, a lot of youth have already been exposed to seeing how it's done. And it could be triggering more than, showing them how to use it could be triggering them to, if they're thinking about quitting, to keep using.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. All right, and then this is the last one in this series, and this was actually my group, so I'm going to go ahead and show it, and then we'll have someone speak about it.
If you're someone with a substance use disorder, coming here is a jumpstart into a different kind of life, which is a life of recovery.
This is a place where somebody can learn the tools to go back into their life stronger and equipped to be successful.
As awful as addiction is, it can still be overcome. Recovery is a lifelong journey of doing things differently than you've been doing them. And that journey starts here.
All right, anyone from our group would like to kind of discuss how they felt about it, any theories they saw? Go ahead, Mindy. I know you want to.
Hug all the attention here, but somebody in our group mentioned that they liked that it referenced building skills as opposed to morals attached to substance use. And I personally found it as just business selling their service. And I thought that it was a little bit ignorable.
Yeah. Anyone else? It doesn't have to be from our group, but anyone else want to share their thoughts and ideas on this?
We have two people in the chat mention the diversity, and I will say it could be because of the target of this ad of West Virginia, but
yes.
Who knows? But yeah, so just the no diversity people are picking up on certain of these ads.
Yeah, absolutely correct. There is no diversity, but I can tell you as someone who went to WVU for 4 years, this ad looks exactly like the people that they're targeting it to. So I think it was intentional to make it look this way, but it could have used a little bit more diversity in a sense that we don't want to say that only this group of people has this problem. So they certainly could have sprinkled in a more diverse cast in there just to make it a little bit more understanding and approachable.
So I was in this group, so I'd like to comment, and I agree with everything. There was no diversity. It was a little bland, but for the pros, I thought the message was good, that they walked you through the journey, and that's what I picked up on. This isn't going to be easy. It's not like you're going to go there overnight and be fixed. So I did like that. The language that they used. And, for recovery, I felt that gave a positive spin on it.
That's a good point. And if you compare this to the other ad that took you through an entire journey that was really a little bit graphic, this was a much gentler way of taking you through the journey, more, didn't have anything in my perception that was triggering.
Exactly. It was more of I felt like a healing type as opposed to the other one. It was almost a little bit like a scare, not a scare tactic, but with showing the drug use, where this took you through that journey without doing that.
Yes. So that was actually the intention of putting these two back to back. So you can see which one was a little bit more severe and which one was a little bit more gentle. So which one gave you the real, and then which one gave you the Mickey Mouse Club version of what you wanted to see. And both of them, depending on who looks at them, may or may not be effective, but I wanted to make sure that we were able to see the difference and how a message can be presented while saying the same thing. Both of these were about treatment facilities and how treatment is well, but one was just a little bit more gentle in their approach. and one was a little bit more empowering than the other. Awesome. And then one thing I'll also add was this was from the theory for this was a social cognitive theory, as well as a theory of planned behavior. And then we also want to note that this ad had a phone number at the end, which was a clear call to action. So they would be able to measure their success by how many people actually called in or how many people entered their treatment facility. So this does have a clear way to be able to measure the effectiveness of the campaign. Okay. So here's the other one. So we understand that prevention has made some really big strides in how we show messages and campaigns, but we're going to do breakout groups again. And this time we're going to look at some campaigns that are old. And I know that most of us have seen this. I'm not going to date age anyone or anything like that, but I'm sure that most of these we've all seen in the past. So when you look at them, I really want you to kind of think about the pros of them, the cons, any misconceptions or ideas you see, and then think about why or why we're not using approaches like this now. So why have we decided that this doesn't work anymore? So Nicole's going to break us up again. If you have technical difficulties, no problem. We're all going to watch these again as a group, just like we've done and discussed. So we'll see you all again in a few minutes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share this video, and then I'll wait for those members of that group to chime in, and then we'll have everyone chime in.
This is your brain. This is heroin. This is what happens to your brain after starting heroin. This is your body goes. It's not over yet. This is what your family goes through. And your friends and your money. Back to the future. Any questions?
Okay, so I'm sure a lot of us remember that ad, and they put that super amazing 90s teen star in there. But members from that group, go ahead and tell us what you thought about it and kind of why you thought it wasn't effective.
All right, Pat, you go. You shared your thoughts, so share with the group.
Okay. One thing we noticed it had no call to action. It had no real significant meaning. And I'll let the other, because one of our team members made a great comment about what she saw. So I'll let her take one from here. But that was two of the things that I saw.
If you're shy, it's okay. We can have someone else speak.
I said, as somebody else said too.
Oh no, we unmute you.
And I was saying that it was very violent and destructive. And as a comment, I was being funny. I said she destroyed the whole kitchen. That made me angry.
Yeah, wouldn't that
just like a
got clean up all of that after they tore up the whole kitchen. Yes. So with the first person indicated that there was no call to action, you're absolutely correct. There was no phone number. At this time when this ad was produced, there was internet, so there was no website. There was kind of nothing there. Just kind of thought that they were showing the effects of your brain if you use a substance. And I think we all can agree again that scare tactics don't work. And for someone to be this violent, I guess the intention was to scare the audience. And clearly it doesn't seem as effective. It just looks like she messed up her own house.
And someone stated too, they didn't show like there's a potential of reversal. So it didn't give room for recovery. Because once they destroy the egg, destroy the kitchen, a lot of them things were not able to be put back together. Someone in the group brought that to my attention. That was a good thought.
Wow, that's an excellent observation. Everything that was broken is something that can't be put back together. Wow.
I have to say one thing, because with all the 100 problems that are glaringly obvious with this ad, this ad was for me, and I remember it as a preteen or maybe younger. Like this was I know what happens to my brain when I do drugs. Like that was a scare tactic that worked on a little girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you all ever are bored enough to go on YouTube and look at these and you kind of look at the comments underneath, there are people that are like, I'm still freaked out about this ad. I remember seeing this when I was a kid. And then there are some people that were like, this never worked. So if you kind of look through the comments, you'll kind of see a wide disparity of people that felt like, yes, this worked for me. I was scared. I did not want my brain to be a cracked egg. And then there were some people that felt like it was extremely dramatic and it did nothing for them. So there's all that, and that's just to bring back a good point that advertising and campaigns are always going to be extremely subjective. There are going to be some people who thinks this is the meat and potatoes, it is everything that they've ever wanted, and that this is wonderful. And then you're going to have a group of people that says, oh, this was horrible. Like, what were we thinking? So advertising and campaigns are completely subjective. And again, there's some people that are going to say this was the best ad that's been ever created. I never did drugs because I saw this ad. So just kind of think about it in terms of it's really based on perception and who sees it. All right, let's go to the next one. All right.
Are they sure drugs? Look, Dad, it's not what you're doing. Dad, answer me. Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
Parents who use drugs have children who use drugs.
All right, Dr. Till, I think this was your group.
It was. So if, all those that spoke up in the discussion, if you wouldn't mind responding now.
Okay, I'll start. We were saying how it was negative, negative ad, confrontational, wouldn't make the kids want to talk to their parents, because they think they'd get yelled at if they do. The parent didn't allow the child to speak, just kept yelling, so wasn't listening.
Yeah.
On top of that, we also brought up and discussed how this could also encourage children not to talk to their parents, because if I'm going to talk to you about something and you're going to scream or yell at me or accuse me and not even let me defend myself, let alone have a conversation, why would I want to share that with you?
Yeah. Very valid point. Thank you.
From a prevention standpoint, it seems like the target audience is the parents who have, I guess, already been users of something. And I'm not sure what the point is.
So that's an excellent point. And that's something that I kind of researched in when I pulled this, that the ad actually was intended for the child, but you can kind of see that at the end of the ad, it doesn't really make it seem like it's for the kid, huh? It kind of switches gears, right? It doesn't really make it seem like that. The intention was that, the kid stops because their dad does it, but then that's kind of not what happened, right?
Also, no call to action.
Yeah. Yeah. No phone number, no nothing. One thing I'd like to point out also is that it places blame. And then also, I think we all know that research does show that, in cases where parents or guardians use substances, so do the children. So the research behind it is not 100% off. However, if you really look at the ad, the dad doesn't seem like he wants to stop smoking, huh? He seems like he likes it. So it doesn't really make it seem like, I don't want to do it anymore, so you shouldn't do it. It kind of just makes it look like, oh, my bad, I did it, and you learned how to do it from me, whoops. So it kind of doesn't really give that full picture of like what's supposed to happen afterwards, because the dad didn't look like he had any interest in stopping.
I could also add one more thing that was also brought up in the group. It also is a good way to point out that it kind of feels definitive, like, oh, if your parent did drugs, then you're definitely going to be doing drugs. Whereas that's not the case. Most teens who will see their parents either use drugs or drink alcohol, it can be a deterrence for them because they see what it does to their parent. Whereas the ad kind of came off, it's nope, it's definitive. If your parent does it, well, then that's predetermined fate.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you for saying that. It really does. It makes it seem like, okay, this is what your life could look like because your parents do it. Thank you. Anyone else have any additional thoughts?
I should move on to the next time-wise.
All right.
In advertising, they say one of the surest ways to get your message across is to put celebrities in your commercial. We hope they're right.
All right, members from my group.
They never really said what the ad was about.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I'll also say that the concept of the ad, there's this thing called the 27s Club where people could idolize certain celebrities because they've all passed away at the age of 27. And you think about people like Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, these people all passed away from overdoses at 27. So if you idolize those people, this doesn't really scare you or have you thinking that I shouldn't do this, right? Kind of puts them on a pedestal and makes it seem kind of cool. All right, I'm going to go into the next one just for time purposes because the next one's a little bit longer.
Feels so sorry trying to finish just so you know. The other day, the policeman came to our place telling me the same thing too. My teacher doesn't have to work time for this neighborhood. And maybe the dealers are scared of police. But they're not scared of me. And they sure don't take no for an asshole.
Kevin Scott and all the other kids who take the long way home. We hear you. Don't give up.
All right, so this was actually an award-winning PSA. So I would like for one person from Vanessa's group or anyone one person from Vanessa's group to kind of talk about what you felt about this. Okay, anybody from anyone can say anything if they like.
Hey, Paris. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Ben, you want to go? You want to
No,
give?
you can go ahead. Carol, you can go ahead. I'm a Southern gentleman. You can go first.
Well, actually, we did sort of have a little bit. After we talked it out, we decided that based on the targeted population, that who they were trying to target, it was very good. PSA it targeted, and it is the reality, the truth of the targeted population that could probably identify with this. But some of us, including myself, kind of just looked at it first, and I think we kind of put our we took it personal. But when we really delved into it and everybody gave the comments, it was a very good video. I mean, for the targeted PSA for the targeted population.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. So, I would say, I had a, kind of personal reaction as well, just because, I could resonate with that young man in that situation. But at the same time, I was just like, it kind of, after we talked that out, we were like, basically it is reaching the target population. But at the same time, it could also be marginalizing or a population as well, just because it's, highlighting certain aspects to, drug trade, you know, kind of thing. So so yeah, it just, you know, it was kind of an indifferent feeling, but after we talked it out, I think we felt good at the end of our discussion.
Awesome. Yes to all of those points. Thank you.
And then it wasn't no call to action at the end, but it did say, hey, we hear you, and we hear all the kids across the country that deals with this. So
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'm gonna wrap y'all up. So here are some tips that you want to think about when you're creating your next campaigns. So think about contracting a marketing or advertising firm that has experience in this field. Look into some ready-made campaigns. There are already plenty of wonderful campaigns that are created that all you need to do is stick your logo and your phone number and your web address on. So consider that as a method as well. Also, make sure that you're researching your jurisdiction's demographic and work with other jurisdictions nearby to combine resources. You know, money can be a barrier, but if there's a jurisdiction nearby that has a very similar structure to yours, it might be good to pool funds and try to do some cross-marketing between those two areas. Create a landing page for your click-through ads. So if you're gonna have something you want somebody to click, create a landing page so people aren't stuck looking through your website trying to find the one page that talks about everything that ad or that campaign talked about. Pull some reports during and after your campaign just to evaluate your impact and how it's going. Reflect on some changes on what occurred and, you know, did your campaign accomplish what you wanted it to? When you're creating your campaign, you're going to ask yourself, what am I supposed to do with this information? So think about that in terms of calls to action. What am I or the person supposed to do with the information I presented? Think outside of the box, you know, don't condemn behavior, but create some positive alternatives. And just a key point, your strategy can simply be campaign planning. You don't have to launch your campaign this year. Your strategy simply could be planning. Planning takes time. So consider that when you're thinking about what you want to do for your implementation methods. You don't have to launch it this year. Maybe you just take some time off to plan it and to make sure that you're doing the most effective one. This is my favorite. Seek help from local influencers. In Baltimore, there's this guy called the Bluebeard Guy. They don't cost a whole lot of money, but they're happy to put your message out. Use some influencers to get your message out for your campaigns. And involve your community as much as you can in your campaign so that it resonates. Does anyone have any questions? And if you like, I'm happy to answer them offline for you after the conclusion of this.
Yeah, we can stay on for extra if people have any questions for us. Throw them in the chat or anything right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And then to be respectful of your time, I just want to say thank you from the BHRT team for allowing us to present to you. If you have questions or comments, you can reach out to us at our BHRT email address or reach out directly to your TA lead. For any updates, check out our website, connect with us on social media, and we're always here to help you in any way you need help with consulting. And thank you so much for allowing us to present to you and have some of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be sending you a follow-up evaluation through everyone. So hopefully you all will complete that. Thanks.
Thank you.